Hello, and welcome to Everyday Connection with your hosts, Rico Shields and Jean Victoria Norlock, bringing your inner light to your everyday life. Welcome, everybody, to this Thursday edition of Everyday Connection. I'm Rico Shields, and right over here we have Jean Victoria Norlock. How are you, Jean?
I am still healthy.
Wow.
I know. I'm kind of in a state of shock. I had a bit of downtime today where I had an upset stomach, but no, it's okay. But I even with my upset stomach, I still got so much done around the house today. And I'm still waiting for the crash, guys, and this is like day freaking 20-something, I'm sure. Let me look at my calendar.
That's what I was going to say. You've been waiting for the other shoe to drop, and pretty soon
day 25.
Get used to the shoe staying on.
Day 25, and I have not yet to crash. So, I don't know.
It's almost a record so far for like the last 15 years.
It is. Fibromyalgia sufferers out there, are you listening to what I'm saying? We found a cure!
We certainly found her cure, and it works for me on a myriad of issues. I even think that my nerve challenge issue, let's not say damage, is responding to it. It's taking it a little time, but it was, in medical terminology, severe. Just short of extreme, so I'm going to give it a little time. But the saga of the sea veg continues because every single person that I have given a bottle to has now phoned me up to find out how to get more because their bottle is gone and they're not going to do without it.
And they can live without it. Do you feel like a sea crack dealer? Because I feel like a sea crack dealer. We had a visitor on the weekend, and she was out, and she's like, what do I do? And I said, well, my bottles aren't here yet from the States, but here, I'll give you some from my personal stash. And I'm counting them out, and I'm putting them in a little baggie. And, it's funny. I shouldn't think about it that way. But the funny thing is, it's just freaking seaweed. It's seaweed. It's so simple. Oh, my goodness.
It's ground up,
seaweed. I don't get it, but it works.
And, so we never should have left the coastline. We should all still be picking up seaweed and eating it. But this is easier. And no bad taste either, capsules, really.
No bad taste. No saltiness. You can take as much as you want and still have room in your stomach for meals. Because if you're like me and you just like food, because I like food, I really do. I love the flavor and the texture of food, and I like cooking, and I like experimenting, and I really like now that I have this sea veg that I'm eating or taking. I'm getting all the nourishment my body needs, obviously, because it's stronger, healthier, and continues to get healthier every single day than it has been in years. I mean, we're talking over 30 years since I've been healthy, actually healthy. I don't remember ever being really healthy. So this is totally new for me. It's very exciting. And I still get to eat all the foods that I love to eat, like cookies and
gluten-free
because
cookies.
Gluten-free cookies.
I
love my gluten-free.
She posts on Facebook to tease the rest of us. Oh.
Yeah, they're pretty
look
awesome.
Pretty awesome. They just... I could almost smell them from the picture. Yeah.
The strawberry almond ones were like, what? But the point is that I can still enjoy all the foods I love. I can still have room in my stomach for full meals with dessert and still be getting all this nutrients. And I don't have to eat like a rabbit. I don't have to eat the paleo diet, which when you live in a remote area and don't have a high budget to work off, it's very difficult. We have to be realistic about that.
Unless she grows it herself or gets it from her neighbors, it's tough to get and very expensive. And Veronica Torres was talking about kelp on her show last night, and she said, yeah, I don't know. I just put it in the blender. It's really, let's just put all of the necessary vitamins and nutrients into something that tastes horrible, And for the kelp fans out there, I'm sorry, it just doesn't do it for me. And,
but it works. So we get why you're eating it. We get why you're eating it. It just, for me, it tastes like crap. So Scott has solved that problem.
Yeah, and you folks know that we have offered some sponsorships from time to time, but we really don't take paid advertising on the radio show because there's enough on the Blog Talk website already. And this is not a paid ad. This is an unsolicited testimonial, I suppose you could say. Now, we have a coupon code for you that'll save you 15%, and we'll get, $1 or something. It's not much. But you don't even have to use the coupon code. And like I said, I'm giving out bottles to people, and
yeah, me too.
I've run out of the free bottles that he sent me. I'm giving away paid bottles because to people I care about. Because
to the Philippines.
Yeah. It's just Jean, 30 years more or less that you've been in pain of one sort or another.
Yeah, I don't remember even as a child ever not being sick. Even as a child, I had intense growing pains and issues with my legs and my muscles, and then I was constantly ill with chest infections and bronchitis and lung infections and sinusitis and allergies and allergic to milk and allergic to this and allergic to that and constant health challenges. I don't remember. I also don't remember ever being able to say I'm whole, well, and healthy. And now I can come to you today and say that, yes, I did break my back so many years ago. Yes, the doctors did diagnose me with this disease they call fibromyalgia. Yes, I do apparently have 2 herniated discs and a spine that's not curved the way it should be curved. But I am living a happy, healthy lifestyle.
And all the stuff you did today, even with an upset stomach, you did in like minus 17 Celsius temperatures, which is like 1 or 2 degrees Fahrenheit for us Americans. Yes. And that temperature alone last winter would have had you pretty much on the couch or in the bed.
Yeah, it really is enough to bedridden most fibromyalgia sufferers or anybody who's got rheumatoid arthritis or any of those diseases, anybody with MS.
It's those things.
The cold temperature and the shift in barometric pressure are very, very potent to your state of well-being. So if the weather's bright and sunny and warm, then you're doing good. But if the weather drops below a certain degree, if it's damp,
sort of disease
you're screwed.
that in England in past times they would have sent you away to India or Egypt or somewhere so that you could be warm and be healthy. And
crazy people with these diseases stay in cold climates. I'm nuts to still be in Canada. That's what the doctor said. He said by the time you're in your 40s, you're gonna have to move to the south. But then they also told me that I'd be in the wheelchair by the time I was 35, and we didn't allow that to happen either. So
we didn't allow that to happen. And now it because I remember this winter before you got the sea veg and we started the sea veg, it got cold and you were kind of doing okay, and then it got cold and you were done.
And I was sick. I was sore, I was exhausted. That's when I started getting really sick. And then with the lung infection, if the diagnosis is correct that I had mold on my lungs, there's no way that I should be breathing again so well already, because it takes 2 to 3 months to cure that particular issue. But I'm fine. I haven't coughed in like a week and a half. So the body the moral of the story, guys, is we saw it proven true with Dr. Terry Walls when she came to see the show, and we tried her diet, and we both had rapid and really apparent response to the change in diet improvement. Like
Oh yeah, it was quick and it was dramatic.
That's the word I'm looking for. Dramatic improvement to the change in diet. So we know that by eating the right foods and feeding your body the materials that it needs to heal itself, it will heal itself. The body is a self-sustaining, self-reproducing, self-fixing. Why can't I get the words across tonight? Oh my goodness.
Self-regenerating.
Self-regenerating. Thank you again, my partner. Self-correcting, self-regenerating.
That's why there's two of us.
That's right.
Together,
so when we feed it,
two half-wits make a witty person. But just to review now, folks, her diet is 3 cups of greens, organic greens, 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of colors, which could be colored veggies or brightly colored fruits, and then 3 cups of sulfur-containing vegetables, which is basically your cruciferouses. But there's 9 cups of food, and that's before you eat anything else. And that's, plus grass-fed beef and
to be grass-fed beef, which is
organ meat once a week.
Right. It's a great diet to get your health to improve. I completely approve of the method because
absolutely
it works.
I do.
But for those of you who aren't able, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and yes, of course, it's worth it. But if you can't do that, if you're one of those people who just can't adhere to the strict kind of, diet that is required in order for you to maintain your health, or if you're in a place where you're not able to easily access those foods, and let's face it, some of the places that we live, those foods are not easily accessible, or they're simply too expensive. If you're not in financial situation where you can afford grass-fed meats and organic vegetables and that many vegetables and fruit a day, cutting out your grains and going gluten-free is not a cheap thing to do. So here's this other option. We're not saying one works better than the other. I'm not going to say that because Dr. Wall's diet worked as well as this worked for me. I just wasn't able to maintain it.
And I hope one day that all of our produce available is organic, sustainably grown, fair wages for the people that produce it and pick it. But until that time, this really will do the trick, people. And for our podcast listeners, just quickly, it's Pharmacy, Pharmacy, Pharmacy.com, and you can use coupon code, and this is in all capitals, EC Family, because all of our listeners and guests become members of our Everyday Connection family. At least that's how we view you. And that's our coupon code, EC Family. You'll get, it only works once, but it'll give you 15% off your entire order. And they've got some great quantity discounts that I've used because everyone that I know of that has taken a bottle of this stuff is like, where is it? Give me more. It's better than being a crack dealer because they all come back, but they come back happy.
They come back happy and healthy and vibrant, and I haven't given it to anybody yet who hasn't had some kind of positive reaction to it. And the stories are so varied. The results are as diverse as the people that are taking this stuff. Whatever your issues are, this stuff is going to target those issues. Why? Because your body is just healing them naturally because you're finally giving it what it needs in order to do its job. End of story. It's that simple. And do you think he passed the test?
Oh, more than that. And our guests, we have guests in the chat room. They've passed the test by staying with us. We usually don't banter that long at the beginning, but this stuff has changed both of our lives, and so we want you to know about it too. But everybody came to hear about sacred geometry and sacred musical science, and so we're going to do that. Tonight we're thrilled to have with us Mr. Julian Forest. Julian, how are you?
Excellent. Great to be here, Rick and Jenny.
Awesome. Welcome to the show. I'm actually really excited about this because I don't know a lot about sacred geometry, and the idea of marrying it to the production and creation of music, to me that seems very logical, but I want to hear, I want to hear the journey that got you there. And so this is going to be an exciting show for me because somebody who can explain the ins and outs of sacred geometry and music all in one is a really cool idea to me. So we're going to start with the main question,
Okay.
and then we'll just go from there. So who on earth are you and what do you do?
Well, I would consider myself a Renaissance person. It's very, very involved, but ultimately, it's just like you said. I really like what you used as your explanation, the combination of frequency and form, the idea of sacred geometry and sacred sound, having a connection that you can actually show is probably one of the greatest things that I have to offer. I actually view it as a pretty important thing because so many times I've taken people aside and initiated them personally in what I call harmonic proportion. And when I teach them harmonic proportion at whatever level they're ready to receive it, oftentimes what happens is they gain a completely different worldview that stays with them permanently, where they realize that all this idea of fragmentation and chaos and all these illusions are really much more resolvable. There's an underlying harmony to everything. And so the connection between frequency and form is what I'm really quite honestly offering to this age. I view it as pretty important thing, something that could be remembered for centuries, quite honestly, because that connection is so often overlooked that when it comes together, something changes in people's consciousness, and they become better artists. They become more thoughtful people. They become more aware. Their consciousness will oftentimes even raise, and sometimes stay that way permanently. So that would be my explanation. It's kind of taking the Renaissance view of things, and let's combine science, art, spirituality, a little bit of mathematics and geometry and all these kinds of things, and let's figure out how it all works together instead of how things are fragmented or separate. That's my answer.
Pretty awesome answer.
It's one of our better answers in It is.
Thank you.
Okay.
We also really like the who am I? I have no earthly idea, but I'm finding out. We like that one too. But that was an awesome answer.
It was an awesome answer, which of course, as all good answers do, leave many more questions. So, but my role on the show is, of course, to not know anything because that's my job. I'm supposed to come at you like a listener who has never heard of you before and has no idea what on earth you're talking about. So,
okay,
explain to me, sir, first what this sacred geometry thing is and how does that play a role in our understanding of the planet and the earth that we live on, in.
Oh, that's an excellent question. Here's where I'll start with that. I like the way that you tied it in with the earth and where we live, because sacred geometry is extraordinarily beautiful. And the reality is there's different kinds of arts out there, and I would never try to pick any one or another and say that it's not useful necessarily, but what I would say is that ultimately, if you really, really tune in throughout history and you start thinking about the really great temple building, the really great artists, the really great musical compositions, you dig a little bit deeper, you find out oftentimes there's a sacred geometry thread that's really behind that, because long, long ago, probably much, much longer than anyone would believe, ancient people discovered a harmonic canon. And this harmonic canon explains exactly how atoms work, even. It explains exactly how the spacings of the planets operate. It dictates directly how plants and trees grow. In the best way, it gives them a format. And you can view everything as being a fractal sacred geometry growth if you really, really study it. So I like the idea of taking, what about the planet we live on and us? Because ultimately we're responsible for ourselves, right? Okay. So how does it relate to us? What does it mean? If I'm speaking with the doctor, I may point out with them that, the very proportions of the human body are based on the Fibonacci series and show them how and where, as an example. If I'm dealing with a musician that's really interested in technique, we might approach the ideas of balance and geometry. But more importantly, a few simple things that I like to offer to people that they can kind of look up on Google on their own and in books and so on and so forth, and take it a little bit further and really kind of get the grand Renaissance kind of viewpoint that I've developed. What I'd say is look up Bode's Law. It's B-O-D-E-S. And Bode's Law specifically shows that the spacings of the planets are harmonic intervals. It's really, really simple. It's not complicated. If you wanted to get more complicated with that, I would say look up Kepler, Harmonies of the World, and things like that. And that's very amazing too. But very simply, Bode's law. And then go back and look at the atomic table of elements and find out when it was. What I found is it was rediscovered, quite frankly. But it was rediscovered by Mendeleev in 1864. And you look at the history, and it's very blatant. He found out that there was an octave relationship between certain things in the atomic table, as we call it now. Okay, so here's the illusion part of it: is we see this graph in front of us, and this rectangle of numbers, and they call it the atomic table. Okay, but that's fine. It's a useful approach to studying it, but the reality is it was discovered by harmonic intervals, and that's an absolute fact. Okay, so when we look at it and realize that you start with hydrogen, and if you start to look at the spiral that it develops and goes through, if you draw it as a spiral instead of as a flat rectangular picture, you can actually see it's a harmonic spiral. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's completely musical, for real. And I can't really stress the importance of this idea. If you take the planets themselves, the solar system we live in, which our planet is a part of, okay, as Gene mentioned, and then take the idea that all of the material, as we regard it, which is not material at all, of course, it's light energy, is harmonic, literally, not kind of or partially, but absolutely. And you really take that in, it can completely change how you view everything. Okay, so the fact is, if you take atoms and you look at them under a microscope, an electron microscope, and you see how they're behaving. They've done this with platinum crystals and various different things. They make the canon of sacred geometry themselves. The actual atoms, what they do under an electron microscope, and all the archetypes for everything is a harmonic geometric relationship. So the ancient Pythagoreans had this saying that I'm very fond of, which is there's geometry in the humming of the strings, and there's music in the whirling of the spheres. Now, they weren't kidding. It's very poetic, that is, but they were serious. They understood these things. They had the full realization that inside of the harmonics inside of a string, okay, in the spacings of the planets and the way the planets were growing, and everything was a harmonic substructure. And so basically taking the atomic table of elements, the spacings of the planets, and then moving into the realm of music theory just a little bit without talking about it too much, I'd like to point out that the harmonics inside of your strings on any string musical instrument are infinite harmonics working together, which you perceive as a tone. So throughout history, a few people here and there, like Pythagoras, have learned to hear that cosmic symphony that's inside the string. It's very rare that anyone can really hear it, but it's a song that's inside of every single note that's being played. So personally, because I've trained myself to hear that, I don't just hear a note anymore. I hear an unfolding of harmonics that make a perception of an overall tone. But those harmonics are inside there at the same time. Now, those harmonics that unfold inside every single note are exactly the same cosmic song as the atomic table of elements and the spacings of the planets, and something that can be demonstrated. So that's what I would say about that.
Aha.
Whew.
We already have questions. This is excellent. No, we're going to have no questions from the chat room. I thought that was a beautiful explanation. Sacred geometry sort of it starts very simple.
Yes.
With essentially a circle, and then from that builds this incredibly complex pattern that is at the same time really simple. It's a bunch of circles. But you end up with triangles and angles and this neat oval thing called the Vesica Pisces, and you can...
Yeah.
It just... It again, without trying to... If this idea of sacred geometry is resonating with you, check out some of these links that he's talking about, and we're going to talk about it some more, but it's people that may have seen a pattern called the flower of life. that is one of the patterns that people that study sacred geometry talk about. But it starts down with the seed of life, moves up there to the flower of life, and there's all these intermediate, and it is rather fractal. The pattern itself is not a fractal, but to me, the way that it moves out is kind of fractal-like.
I agree with you, Rick. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can, a fractal is sort of, I like to think the easy explanation of fractal is something that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you take any one piece, you can zoom in as far as you want, and you keep seeing the pattern over and over and over again, like
absolutely
mirrors looking into mirrors. And you can do that with the sacred geometry form as well. The flower of life. You zoom in, it's two circles that make a oval overlap.
I really like your explanation, by the way. Very good.
Oh, well, thanks. That's my job. I'm an interdimensional translator. And
nice.
I try to figure out how to say really big things really small.
But make them fluid and something that can be communicated easily. And
but
I like the points that you brought up, though. I'd like to say that.
And it's time, I think, as a society, as a humanity, that we and this sort of convergence. You talked about being a Renaissance man, where you want to take art and science and spirituality and like blend it all together. And that's something I think people miss about the Renaissance, the historical period called the Renaissance. Folks like Leonardo da Vinci, they were generally folks who had studied math, what science there was to study, but they also were astrologers and spiritualists and artists, and they sort of did it all.
Exactly. And one thing I'll point out, like you said, as far as a historical perspective on what this information and knowledge really means, is the rebirth that happened, that we call the Renaissance, happened because some very visionary people sent people all over the world to get books and bring them back and then have them translated and then disseminated them. So now when you have Plato and the Hermetica and Archimedes coming back, which are the kinds of things that Leonardo da Vinci was reading, this is where the Renaissance really comes from. It's all from the ancient world, and it's all related to ancient Egypt and India, which is where Pythagoras studied and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, because of the loss of the Alexandrian Library, we lost a great deal of those things for centuries and brought the Dark Age on. And then when we bring it back, you get a Renaissance when the right people come across it. So this is a time for a new Renaissance. This is a time where we can say, with all the tools that we have and all the ability and all the communication going on all over the world, we can again, for more people than ever, combine these things now. And I want to stress, very important for everyone, that you do not have to be a great mathematician to do any of this. The very excellent description that Rick just gave didn't use any mathematics. It's not necessary. Don't get me wrong. I love mathematicians and mathematics, and when I'm intensely studying, I do some mathematics for sure. But the essence of it can be done with, if you had a stick and sand, and you could explain it to someone. Or, to do the musical part, ideally a stick, sand, and a guitar string, one string strung across something. The essence of it is to understand what's really happening, as opposed to how many equations that you can do. So it's a really neat thing, the sacred geometry and the harmonic sciences combined together, especially don't have to really be as involved as they sound. But I will tell everyone this, because it's kind of important, is to really get to the essence of it and really understand it and know what the right answers were and how everything related. That did take tremendous amounts of study on my part. Oh, I'm not going to kid anybody.
Yeah, there's so much that I glossed over that it's just really not even funny. But because you could make a lifetime out of studying just sacred geometry and the proportions. And we did have a question from the chat room, and we just kind of blend those in when they come along instead of having a Q&A period.
Absolutely.
So structured. Oh, goodness. Um, but Little Wing would like to know, how would you explain why certain musical tones affect people in different ways? For example, some musical tones might make a person cry, etc.
Very, very good. First, let me say that Little Wing is a very, very dear friend of mine. I'm really pleased that she's on here. She actually saw me play on the Woodstock site in New York, the actual site of the 1969 Woodstock. She was there, and she filmed me,
Cool.
by the way. Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge her and her friendship. Here's how I'll answer that, and it's a little bit lateral, and especially since she's the one that asked. I'll just be honest. I hear all the time from people that they enter into heightened states of consciousness or have mystical experiences when I perform. It happens often. And a lot of times it stays with them, even if we didn't talk about sacred geometry or harmonic sciences. So in addressing what kind of effect tone has and coming to that, I'll first say that there's a thing about intention that's very mystical in art. Somehow intention gets transmitted in all kinds of ways that we wouldn't expect. You know, you take a CD, for example, and it got torn up into little bits of information and put through a computer, but somehow we can still feel the intent of the artist, right? Okay? So there's something that gets transmitted above the tones being used, even in a painting from centuries ago, as another example, or a temple that was built thousands of years ago. Somehow intent is being transmitted in all kinds of mysterious ways that we don't necessarily know how to exactly identify. So there's what I want to say about tone more than anything. If you take a great guitar player like Jimi Hendrix, there's intention being transmitted in every single note he plays. And something about, you know, just even being transmitted through that touch of his finger some way, okay? But as far as types of tones and how they affect people, starting with intent and realizing there's lots of different answers to that, the biggest thing is that inside of every single note that's being played is that harmonic series that I talked about. And that harmonic series is the song of the universe, okay? So there's a part of us that actually knows that. There's a part of us that biologically our ears are designed to pick up those notes in certain frequency spectrums. There's a part of us that understands that everything is really harmonic, even if we don't really have any science or words for it. We get it at some level. So that harmonic series inside of every note is really the cornerstone of all music theory. People like Bach knew this. You know, Leonardo da Vinci understood it. Pythagoras understood it. People that made music theory understood this stuff, okay? That's based on the harmonics inside of the string. So when we go inside or out of that harmonic formula, which is based on, for example, a major chord, the harmonics are the strongest ones. When we hear, say, for example, a C major chord, and, you know, someone's banging away on their acoustic guitar, or they, you know, funk that on the piano, at some level, we understand that's the foundation. That's how the harmonics unfold simply. Okay, if we play a minor, then we know that we're a little bit outside of how the harmonics unfold in their strongest way in the beginning when a tone is struck. Okay, so there's a part of us that understands that that's a little bit off of the norm and it has a tendency towards sadness. It's not an absolute, but it has a tendency in that direction. So if I play what's called a half step, which on a guitar would be moving one fret to the next, it's the closest note together, but it's also the most dissonant. Okay, it's the most clashing. If you were to play an E and an F together, they're very clashing. So here's how I would explain Little Wing's question at another level. If you were to take the vibration of an E note and make a graph out of it, which I've done these things many times, and you see what the rising and falling is of that note, and you take an F note right next to it and make a graph of that, you could clearly see that the geometry of the vibration is clashing. It's fighting against each other. It's a destructive vibration. It's not coalescing. But if you take a major fifth, you know, and say like E and B, and you graph those, and you see how they rise and fall, and then you put a B above E, you can see that the crests and the troughs of that wave are not destroying each other. They're working together. Okay, at least reasonably well, right? Comparatively to, say, an E and an F. So that's how I would reduce all of that down, is realizing that the notes themselves contain love and strife, if you will.
And of course, much of the teaching that's running around these days is, listen, people, It's all about vibration. Everything's vibration.
Yes.
Abraham would say, what you taste, what you see is vibration, and what you hear is vibration. We know, most of us know that from school science, that there's waves in there. It's vibrating something.
Absolutely.
But Abraham points out that what you can taste is vibration. What you can touch is vibration. What you can smell is vibration. And that is, to me, this, because there's ancient healing arts that involved tones and sounds, some that have survived to this day, different disciplines where priests or monks might chant over you progressions of musical notes. And just recently, I was talking about this convergence of science and spirituality. Just recently, there was an article in the BBC about, they're calling it quantum smell. They always thought that smell was just chemistry, that the shape of the molecule, triggers certain things in your nose, and that's what you smell.
Right.
But now, of course, we've looked at more stuff, and we've found that there are things that don't smell the same, that have the same geometry, that have the same shape.
Yeah, there's something more going on for sure.
On a further examination, they've discovered that these two molecules have a different vibration. So there's now a scientific study showing that our noses interpret vibration more than chemistry. So
that's good to hear.
It's coming together. But that's, to me, if it's true, and I don't claim any corner of the market on truth, but if it's true that everything is vibration, then everything would respond to vibration to one degree or another.
Absolutely. And resonance.
Yeah, you have two tuning forks, you smack one of them and get it vibrating. If the other one's the same note, it'll just start vibrating all by itself.
That's a perfect, great example for people. Absolutely. Yeah, the tuning fork example. And I love this idea. Yeah. I love this idea that we're now at a point where more people all over the world can actually have access to these ideas and have this realization kind of naturally, that it's like, well, okay, even, mainstream scientists are telling us this, and it makes it easy for people to accept the idea. And then, of course, upon a little bit further introspection, we start to have a better idea of really revealing, what it is we're really doing here and what's really going on. Because when we go through every day under, Maya, and believe me, I still slip into Maya sometimes, or delusion, or that thing that the Gnostics were telling us about, the illusion of life and everything, where we're just going through life and we're just kind of operating on impulse, and everything's just the way it seems. We're not tapping into our potential. We're just kind of going through motions. But if we stop and reflect and say, wait a minute, this is a magical, amazing reality. There's nothing ordinary or mundane about reality itself. It can have its mundane aspects or it's whatever, but that opening is, I think, is really important for this time period in history. And once again, it's an under thread to everything. You look a little bit closer, and the things are not the way it seem. Realization is underneath a lot of great art. You have to look for it a little bit deeper. But people like Leonardo da Vinci, and then you take Bach, for example, and he seems very mundane on the surface if you read a biography of his life, but you start looking further and further, and you find out that's not the case. Same with Vivaldi, for example, another really great composer. The awareness of everything being vibration, and then taking it to another level and saying, as you both pointed out, and I'm very, very grateful, by the way, that you understand what I'm saying, is that combination of sacred geometry and sacred sound and actually showing how they interrelate is one of the most important things that I'm teaching people right now, is that there's actually a demonstrable relationship. They don't have to be viewed as separate entities that have nothing to do with each other at all. It's just, that's how we've been taught,
Right, and that there really is sort of there's a way to see sacred geometry, like a Nautilus shell and the Fibonacci sequence. There's a way to just see it. But there's also an underlying science that people are beginning to use for constructive purposes. And a lot of the, I think, intuitively discovered say healing tones, this and that they'll discover science will come together with that, and they'll be able to discover some of the harmonics and reason behind that. At least I hope so.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. It's kind of like taking the simple idea of a molecule and realizing, okay, if you have a molecule that's made of different atoms and the atoms have a resonant frequency, then it's like a chord, right? So simple. I mean, people come across that without really being very scientific, even just kind of putting the ideas together. But I love this idea that taking resonant tones that are good for us and using them for healing could come more into the fore and be an actuality. And there's always stories about Pythagoras where he would cure people of even just distemper, an emotional thing with the right kind of music, and so on and so forth. And because they understood it, the Egyptian priests were some of the real greatest masters of this. So you have to look really, really hard and really carefully to uncover what it is they really understood. It's been so swept aside or unnoticed.
And you really kind of have to go back into the ancient part of even Egyptian history, because they kind of get it messed up by the later part. But
I agree with you.
Many people believe, I believe, that vibration, sound in a sense, was used in moving large stones.
I think that some of these legends, Pantheon, for example, from the Greeks, and various different ones, just like you're talking about, there's something to it. There's something going on about the resonance of these archetypal legends about sound being used to move giant blocks that keep coming up with strength in our histories. I agree.
All right, so let's see. What should we start with? Maybe start with Bach, just to give people something that they've maybe heard sort of before.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So tell us, why did you pick this toccata, and tell us a little about it before we get there.
Absolutely, and I'll be kind of brief with it. The first thing that I want to say is that most of what I'm doing these days is very, very celestial. It sounds like a celestial symphony, most of what I'm doing. But I'm still a rock guitar player, and I'm also an Indian musician, all kinds of different things. I'm a classical guitarist. But this Bach piece, one of the reasons why I chose it is because, like you said, it's something that people are familiar with. But in the 1700s, pipe organs were like the Marshall stacks. These people wanted to experience some volume and some tone and some resonance, when they built these pipe organs.
Oh,
and so
they're pretty amazing. If for anyone that's not been in the presence of a large cathedral pipe organ,
there you go. Yeah, and so
wow, your whole body just vibrates like a rock concert.
Exactly, and so I'm glad that you understand. And what I want to point out to people is, if you went to saw me at a concert, most of the time I'm going to have a lot of celestial music, but the power and the resonance of the Bach piece is a good example of the idea of combining sciences, because you're not really supposed to be able to play a complicated pipe organ piece on an electric guitar or get its organ swells or its resonance, but I did. So it kind of gives an idea of combining different areas of things into something. So with that, let's go ahead and start the Bach piece there.
Yeah. So everybody hang with us. It's a short piece, and then we'll be back and maybe talk about timepiece instead of short piece. But that's
cool.
that's when we get back. So this is Bach's toccata in D. I can't.
In D minor. You got it.
I can't see the whole name in my control panel for whatever
toccata
reason.
in D minor.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
It would help if, I could play that through Blog Talk and High Fidelity and everybody could really crank it up. You got to feel it. I've had the good fortune of being able to visit Paris and was in Notre Dame when they played the pipe organ that's in there. And
excellent.
Wow. Forget it. It's the whole place moves, and I'm like the insides of your body feel like they're moving around in weird ways. It's really
I'm really glad you shared that to give people a visual of why I would play that piece with such intensity and such power, because I'm really actually being true to the real tradition of it. And that timepiece, when that comes up, that'll be much more ethereal, by the way, everybody.
Well, and that brings me to someone that I wanted to mention to folks, because some people may, if they don't recognize the name, I bet you they would recognize one of his videos if they played it, because on YouTube there's sort of this Mr. Sacred Geometry guy that has a bunch of videos and explains it with his own work, and
absolutely,
and is somebody that can take it as deep as someone wanted to go with it, but also does a fair job of. It helps if this wasn't radio and we could show pictures, it would be way helpful, because Sacred Geometry is easy.
And you're talking about Charles, right? Charles Gilchrist.
And
yeah,
I understand that you know Charles, and
absolutely.
I'm not really surprised, but surprised and impressed, and all that kind of stuff. Well, he's one of those people. He's got a series of how many videos? Huge number, I think.
I don't know exactly how many. I'm on 2 of them personally, but his channel, just to give people an idea, is around 2.5 to 3 million views on his channel. Just
Holy
gives people
shit!
Some kind of sense. Yeah, that's fairly major, and I definitely wanted to bring up Charles.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to mention Charles Gilchrist and also my friend J. Gabriel Cavazos. They are we're like a team. We're definitely working on things, and it's fairly major stuff. Just to be really direct about it. J. Gabriel Cavazos, for an example, is very visionary, and he's involved in actually constructing places like in Costa Rica and things like that. They're around the idea of sacred geometry, and so these kinds of things are actually being now used to develop cities and living structures for people. So coming back to Charles Gilchrist for a moment, Sacred Geometry 201A, for everyone who'd like to know, it was soundtracked by me, and it has 2 very celestial compositions on there. And then there's Sacred Geometry WC01, which is the first one we did with the webcam, which has part of Timepiece on there. And the relationship between Charles Gilchrist and I is something that came out very, very naturally. We started interacting and just realized that we both been down pretty much the same pathways and could converse easily without explaining much of anything to each other, very, very deeply and intensely without any real effort. But the important thing is I want to take a moment to really honor Charles Gilchrist in this interview, because people are kind of surprised that I would show that much deference for anybody, because I'm pretty much captain my ship the way I live my life. But he spent over 20 years producing magnificent artworks around sacred geometry. He's actually done the visual thing, and he's also created this magnificent series of videos, Charles Gilchrist has, where he explains it in a way that's not mind-boggling or difficult or anything. It's just really, really interesting. And he knows all the depth, but he knows how to make it accessible.
And that really is through the visual image, because people have been looking at shapes longer than they've been hearing shapes.
Absolutely. And so my part in the whole thing is that I understand all the sacred geometry, but I haven't spent over 20 years making the artworks or done the work to make this kind of videos. So credit where credit is due. And one of the biggest reasons why
it's
so well with
two
them,
different intentions and purposes too, though.
Exactly, and that's why I get along so well with them. It's because I'm actually bringing the sound part of it in where people can understand it and put it all together, and the combination is tremendous. I opened up the 3 Days of Light festival by live stream in North Carolina recently, and I opened up Charles Gilchrist's talk, and I just talked about harmonics and how they relate on the strings simply, and that's what opened his sacred geometry presentation. So it's a really neat working relationship.
That's just awesome, and awesome. Although I suppose I've come to expect it more out of our EC family, that the way that they blend together. But that, he's more the visual artist kind of guy and mathematician, and not that you understand the math and are a mathematician in that way, but then you're also a sound artist instead of a visual artist.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my notebooks and in my history, I've certainly made artworks and made amazing things, but I will probably never, ever be anywhere near the point where I would say spend over 20 years and just produce magnificent graphic artwork one after the other. But so I understand it fully, and I have tremendous background with it all. But once again, I'm focused more on the actual sound thing. So
you couldn't see yourself spending 20 years doing amazing graphics, but I could see you spending 20 years doing amazing music.
Yeah, and what's great is Charles is super harmonically aware. He really understands music. So when he's formatted his videos around my compositions, it's a perfect match because he understands the music so well. So we have lots more work together, and I don't want to say too much, but I'm actually composing something very, very important in honor of Charles Gilchrist currently.
We love anticipation.
Yeah, and make a strong mental note because I was out and about on a sunny day today, and some very important pieces of that composition came to me very, very clearly, and I realized it was important. So yeah.
Awesome.
And,
so see, we already have our excuse to schedule you back in when
Absolutely.
When that comes out. You got to come back.
So let us know when it's ready, so we can have you on here and you can share it with our listeners.
Mental note taken, Gene.
So Timepiece, then it's called Timepiece in 3 Revolutions.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about the name and the piece, because it hooks you up with Charles Gilchrist and also with our friend Brendan Culleton. Some of you may know him as Skull Babylon, who was on the show some time ago and they have their own show, Paradigm Shift Radio, and Julian's also been over there. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my interview with Paradigm Shift Radio and Brandon, too. It was a really, really good experience, and I'm really enjoying this interview as well. And what I really want to say about Timepiece, and this is for the mystics more than anybody, even though it's for everybody to hear this, Timepiece is a magical composition. It has a majestic life of its own. I'm really not kidding. I just did a tribute for Ravi Shankar for a major cultural organization because of that composition. It's on one of Charles Gilchrist's videos. It's going to be on here. Really important things like that have happened around this composition. It's something that is inspired directly from the celestial planes, and that's as simple as I can put it. It's not from here. And it sounds like there's a bunch of tracks where there's a rack of keyboards or something going on. It's just me and my guitar. That's it. It's just me and a guitar. But it's so harmonically suspended, and the technique is very pure, and the conceptualization of it makes it sound like there's maybe a chamber orchestra or a bunch of instruments playing. And so, once again, it's a celestial origin, and I would appreciate any feedback on this particular composition too, because I'm going to be working to get it released online here pretty soon. But with that, please play it whenever you're ready.
You bet. So Timepiece in 3 Revolutions. This one's almost 7 minutes long. So this would be the time, folks, if you need to refill your tea, but crank up your speakers before you do so that you can keep track. And
nice.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wow.
You like that, Gene?
Seriously, that's just you and a guitar, man? Like, really? I've spent a lot of time with musicians, and I would expect that kind of dynamic from, say, like a hang or an organ even, that kind of depth. But not many people can make a guitar do that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone do it yet. I'll be honest.
I saw this guy named Julian Forest on YouTube. He was pretty amazing.
I mean, we could bring Jimi Hendrix back and see if he can do it, but Santana might be able to pull it off. I don't know though. You know, I am a huge Santana fan. Him and Jimmy could do things with guitars that no other human being has ever done before. But you, sir, I mean, really, that's just you and a guitar?
Yeah,
really?
Absolutely. It's one of the new things that I've invented, and so it's revolutionary.
So cool.
It's something totally innovative.
Is.
Yeah, I did an interview on Mark Berman too. I did a Mark Berman interview, and we rigged up a setup just barely. I just barely figured it out at the last second how I could plug my guitar into a PA and make it work. There's a couple of technical issues, and so I ended up playing these really symphonic improvisations, and he was just blown away because he'd heard me do it live in a concert, but then that was with my own gear, right? But I did it through just plugging right into a PA too, and so on those two interviews, there's the one interview and the one song that he captured. You'll hear more symphonic stuff if you want to look up on YouTube. It's just Julian Forest, Phoenix, Arizona. It's really easy to find. But the idea that I'm bringing into more people's awareness is this idea that resonance is something that can be transcendent to what you think your instrument is capable of if you understand the harmonics behind it. So right now, for example, I'm writing a symphony that I alluded to a little. It's so harmonic that people are going to be able to hear notes that I'm not even playing. It's so harmonic. There's actually notes that come out. Yeah, that I'm not even playing the note. I just made it so resonant that it pops out. These notes will.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem. I mean, when you're sitting there listening to it, and if you really listen to it and allow yourself to get lost in it, it doesn't seem like that's possible for one guitar and two hands to do. I mean, you're kind of thinking by the end of it, there has to be some trick, some overlay tones going on there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not.
Dude's got 4 arms and 2 guitars. Come on, really?
Yeah. You're an alien? I don't understand. We have 20 fingers, not just 10. So, yeah, I mean, you have to, and especially somebody who's been around musicians, and you know what the average musician is capable of doing and what the average musician is not capable of doing. And the average musician is not capable of producing a full sympathy harmonic production on one guitar.
Yeah,
that's why
correct.
they have bands.
Absolutely, and when I played at the Woodstock site, and once again I was reminded by my friend Little Wing coming in on a chat. That's been legendary in Woodstock Nation ever since I played there, because I winged the whole thing and flew into the Woodstock site. So many incredible details about how I shouldn't have worked, and this amazing thing happened. Rick may have saw something about it on one of my pages there when he looked at my composition timepiece. But anyway, the important thing is that that resonance is what's really important, is understanding that there's a whole nother series of things. And I don't want to make it sound too mundane or scientific by saying that it's a whole new type of music theory, because it's beyond that even. It's this way of making something resonant with the entire cosmos, your body, your guitar, the air, resonating the notes right off the speaker of the amplifier, all these things together. I'm using a subtle form of feedback. I love Jimi Hendrix. When he'd get up on stage, he had more control over feedback than any other guitarist ever, actual control of it, because he could hear that resonance. And I have that same kind of a control over feedback, but I also have control over feedback where I'm resonating my notes off the speaker at a more subtle level of feedback, and the harmonics are doing something different inside the notes because of that too.
Yeah, you're
But it almost
an interplay almost between your guitar, the speaker, the air, it's all.
Well, I was
exactly.
just going to say, it almost feels to me like you're not you're not creating a tone so much as you're giving birth to a tone and allowing it to expand and to come into its own. Does that make sense?
That is an excellent thing to say, and it's very like that. I'll definitely remember how you explain that, because that's the best description I've heard of the idea of the tone filling space naturally as though it was already a part of it. Instead of me plucking a tone, I'm actually resonating a tone with everything that is.
Right.
That's kind of what it feels like to me. I can't say sounds because I'm tone deaf.
Okay. But you feel resonance. You get the quality of it. Yeah.
I feel music, yes, because I'm very sensitive. I eat the whole fibromyalgia and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I'm very sensitive to vibration. And so I feel the music. And it took me a while listening to it. But after a while, it was like, oh, okay, it's not music. It's alive. And that's kind of the sense I got of it, was this is a living, breathing, entity. It's a self-aware, conscious entity that's been created.
Absolutely. Very cool.
I believe that piece, we could get a different crowd. And, of course, time being illusory, it's aware of all of our podcast listeners and everybody. We could go somewhere to a concert where you play that piece, but there's a different group of people. I think it would probably feel slightly different, because there's just it is in large part too, as artists are. You said it was a sunny day, and so some pieces of it just came to you. So there's a great intuitive portion to what you do as well, huh?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And by the way, I want to acknowledge your point, too, about the subtlety of musical composition and, different environments and so forth. I have this very interesting reputation where everyone knows I'm going to do exactly what I want on stage. I'm going to do what I want to do. It's that simple. I will. But I have enough taste to know that I'm going to want to do things that are kind of fitting with the bigger picture, too. You know what I mean? So it always works. I can play in an art gallery, or I can get up on stage at a big rock festival if I wanted to, and control Marshall stacks at the same time. So, but how you're playing something, really the vibration of it is it's a coalescence between you and the people that are listening, So that's important to realize that. And the intuitive thing that you mentioned, Rick, is really, really super important, because I'm constantly finding myself discovering things or coming across magical things or making magical things happen on something that's beyond my rational mind. I still have a side of me that's like scientific and everything, and I think that's really important. But ultimately, magic is in realizing the alignments and the resonances of things and seeing them for what they are, and recognizing how to cultivate that. And it's the same with composition. Like I said, actually today, being out on a sunny day, the parts of a composition that came together are something I'm writing specifically for our sacred geometry friend Charles Gilchrist. Mm-hmm. And so that came to me part today. And but the intuitive is super important. You look at everybody, no matter who they are. A lot of the best scientists, Kepler and Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, and Pythagoras, musicians, because they understood resonance and they got in contact with this idea,
And you get the feeling, if you look at their writing or their work across time, that often they could see what it was. They could see it, and they were trying to figure out how to put it into words or into mathematics, but they could see it in their imagination, in their interior world. They could see it. They're like, I know it's true because I can see it,
exactly.
And I'll figure out how to write it down so that you can see it too. But sometimes sometimes it took them a while. I get a feeling that often happens. That science is really more closely connected to art than scientists might like to admit.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And here's another thing that I'll share with everybody, because I'm very comfortable with you all. Is I live my life basically like a visionary Renaissance artist. I go from one magical project to another, and that's what I actually live for. And it took me a while to get back in that group. It's very risky, It's like it's not a safe way to live, But oftentimes, I live as if I were wealthy or a world famous person or something. I go and play in mansions, I do these things where I'm asked to honor Ravi Shankar, something that you can't really put a price on, or doing the videos for Charles Gilchrist, playing on the Woodstock site, all this kind of stuff. So people that are trying for that higher artistic ideal, a lot of times when you look at how crazy their life actually was, once again on purpose, I'm kind of mentioning Kepler and Pythagoras and Leonardo da Vinci, their lives weren't, smooth and fluid and easy.
No, I've been trying to convince people for years that the crooked road is the more efficient road, even
Sometimes
though it may not
is,
be shorter. It can be counterintuitive, sort of, but the crooked road where because you're explaining really the idea behind everyday connection. You connect every day, and so you see what it is you're going to do that day, and you're following your passion, and it leads to these, you call them magical projects.
Yeah.
But if you weren't ready, willing, and able to just accept and go with one of these things that appears, it wouldn't, let's see,
yeah.
I'll have to calculate that for, not quite like that. It's like,
exactly.
you want me to do what? Okay, cool. I don't have any amps or anything, but I got a guitar. Let's see what we can do. And because that's really literally kind of what Mark Berman did to you, isn't it? You didn't have all of your, like a full setup. You just were there with a guitar and to talk.
Exactly.
And he's like, go play.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was pretty amazing. I've put the link up in the chat room, and I will put it on the archive of the show, that video, because it is an amazing piece. And
thank you.
So there will be links up in the archive on our website, everydayconnection.me, because it's all about me, no matter which one of you is reading that. But we are, wending our way towards the end of our time together. Our 90 minutes around here at Everyday Connection go by really fast.
Really fast.
We don't play that whole ordered time thing quite well, but that's another show. So for our podcast listeners, who there's thousands of every week, let's let them know where they can find you. What would be your spot on MySpace, your page on Facebook? Where can they find out what Julian Forest is up to? And
Sure. I found that some of the more recent stuff is coming up just with a search on YouTube or Google of Julian Forest, Phoenix, Arizona. It brings up some things that, instead of trying to remember a web address. But here's a couple of web addresses. One is youtube.com/Julian Forest Phoenix. So it's youtube.com/Julian Forest Phoenix. And I don't go to my MySpace much anymore. It's kind of just, kind of an ongoing thing that's there from a few years ago. But my Facebook page is facebook.com/Julian.Forest.92. So it's Julian.Forest.92. If you're looking through different Julian Forest profiles or whatever, there's one resort that has that name. But the way to recognize me is I've got long curly hair, and there's a picture of me with a bunch of foliage from the town of Woodstock behind me. That's my profile picture, if that helps anybody. Yeah. And
there is a page there. If you just type in Julian Forest, there will be a page that comes up where it says Julian Forest Musician/Band, and that's you.
Oh, yeah, the fan page, too.
The fan page,
too.
Yeah. So, again, we'll have links to those there. Do you have any magical projects? I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times you're doing a piece to honor Charles. Do you have any concerts? You have anything coming up that you want to tell people about?
There's a whole bunch of things going on. So I'll try to just kind of condense it down. because there's so many things. It's hard to actually choose. But I did mention my friend J. Gabriel Cavazos, and he's doing some very important things in Costa Rica at the Mango Tree Spa and Resort. And so we're trying to figure out exactly when I'm going to go there and what I'm going to do. But I'll definitely be there probably at the same time as Charles Gilchrist, as a matter of fact. So that's in the works. I'm also doing very, very important cultural interaction with India. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if I end up going over to India to tour and working with some of the best Indian musicians in the world, which is very exciting. When you can be offered to work with Grammy Award-winning Indian musicians are willing to, they're just asking you to work with them because there's that mutual respect. It's very awesome. And then I'm taking on a few more students. I'm finding that that's helpful for me. It reminds me of things, so I consider that important. But the biggest thing is overall, there's a whole bunch of new material that everyone should be looking for. It might take me a few months or whatever, but it's all in the works. So my YouTube channel and my concert performances are going to have a huge influx of new material soon. So keep an eye out for that in all kinds of ways.
So very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Jane, questions, statements?
Well, yeah. Okay, well, statement. Well, there's a couple questions. There's always
sure,
questions.
Go ahead. Okay.
EPs, CDs. I mean, if I wanted to not play it on YouTube, but I wanted to sit in my living room or my house and just crank it up full volume, how would I get my hands on your music and to my hot little mitts in Canada?
I'll address that really quick, and thank you. I'm in the process of having a professional website built and getting everything online. It's been a little bit of an arduous process, taking longer than I would have liked, but it's one of the more important things. So that will be up in the future, and you can look for the links on my Facebook page and YouTube sometime in the next few months, I believe.
Excellent.
Awesome. And I have yet to ask this question to anybody who's come on the show, but I'm going to ask you just for shits and giggles because I'd love to hear your take on it. Why do all the cool people come from Phoenix? Because we have had some of the coolest guests on this show, and y'all come from Phoenix.
And Jean's
What's
name
going on
in the
Phoenix?
chat room. Jean's name in our chat room is FEENX, Phoenix.
And my website is
her
Phoenix
website
Rising.
is Phoenix Rising. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Oh,
what's
interesting.
going on.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this, and this is the real answer, by the way. I'm not really trying to be too lateral at all. If you look at the history of ancient cultures, the majority of the time, the best and the highest civilizations have always been in sun zones. Not an absolute, but for the most part, you look at Egypt, you look at parts of India, South America, wherever. Most of the time, it's in the sun zone or the sunnier part of the country. If it's a big country, it's not really a sunny country. Okay, but nonetheless, so there's something about the sun.
Aztecs, Maya, Egypt,
yeah.
Phoenix, Sedona.
Sedona, exactly. And then the other thing that I would say is, you brought up an excellent point there, Rick, that Sedona is a few hundred miles from here, and I think that there's enough interplay between us and Sedona that helps. But if I'm being totally honest with you, if you come to Phoenix, don't ever forget that you are in a metropolis. Ever, not for a second. I don't want people to think that there's like a great, huge renaissance spirituality going on here only, because that's just not the case, unfortunately. I actually sometimes think about relocating to Sedona just to get out of the metropolis. But yeah, there's something more going on here. There's a relative degree of arts and spirituality, definitely up and coming, yeah.
Ultimately curious if it was a vibrational thing. I mean, we know that there's several locations around the world where the vibration and the planetary harmonics are in perfect alignment to encourage creativity and connection to that higher self. So that I've never been to Phoenix. I've never been to Sedona. However, we have had some incredibly amazing guests who have come on from Sedona and from Phoenix. And I'm just curious, because you're living in that area, is it a vibrational, is there a little bit of a vibrational boost there?
Yeah, there is for sure. And I'll share this with you in brief. I've lived in other parts of the country where it's not sunny, and I had the major realization that I am a sun person. I just had to have the sun, literally. And I came here and I winged my whole move several years back, just on a whim, like, you're just going to do this, you're going to figure it out. So as soon as I got off the plane, I immediately noticed that the energy was different, for real. And I spent my early time here on an estate, which is lucky that was nice. You know, there's palm trees around and all sorts of stuff. I was soaking up the sun like a madman. I was just like a big giant sponge for the sun. Even though it was 110 degrees, I didn't care. I loved it. But there is something vibrational about the Phoenix land itself, despite the metropolis. But once again, you know, it is this big city. You know,
a place like Sedona. You know, you think about chakras in the human body. It's not a needle point. It's a sort of a big swirling vortex. And I think Phoenix is close enough to Sedona that sort of that whole area around there is something special because
I agree.
Phoenix,
yeah.
Scottsdale, you know, and Sedona right up there. It's an amazing part of the country, and I've been telling people for years that I'm at least partially solar powered. Because
well, you know,
if I go too long in the gray weather, I just really, you don't want to know me. It's not pretty.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you know, I have a sun lamp. I have coffee in the morning during winter time.
Coffee, yeah, I know the coffee actually helps. It offsets.
No, I mean
I
have my morning coffee under a sun
lamp
in the morning in the winter because I can't live.
Yeah.
And the days get really short. You know, up there in Canada.
Live without the sun.
And
yeah, you might want to get out of there eventually, Gene, get to a sunnier zone, possibly. You know, I'm just saying.
Well, I don't know. It's pretty Canadian, eh?
I'm very Canadian. Plus, my home base, Julian, sun lover or not, you would love it here. I'm telling you, this is like
is it beautiful,
a creator's
green lush.
Yeah. I am surrounded by bush, and I am in a house that was built by a family member, and it's almost all windows.
And there is this cool chapel.
Cool.
Talk about
nice.
Talk about old cathedrals, and you talk about sacred geometry. There's this chapel not far from her that was built by whom, Jane?
It was built by the some of the stonework was originally built by the Templars, and then brought to Canada.
And doors and things were brought from France and architects and stoneworkers and there's this little Masonic sort of Templar sort of chapel right up the road. It's an amazing place.
That's cool. Yeah, they probably chose that geographically for a reason.
In the middle of a vineyard, it is, and her water is in their water table where she lives. The water is sort of permeating in this mass of quartz crystal. So there's a lot of amazing places, and we tell people often, if you've just got this itch and you've just had this itch about, man, I got to go to Phoenix, or man, I got to go to Toronto, or man, I got to go to Hawaii or Cusco, or
just go.
Just go.
Julian said waiting for you there.
Like
it's
so
true.
many of our guests, Julian said, you winged it, right? You just said, okay, look, I got to figure out how to do this because I got to go. And,
exactly.
and that is the crooked path, people. That is sort of your heart talks and says go.
Yeah.
There's a reason, but it would be too much to explain. So you just got to go.
Yeah, and that's a good tip for people.
And you know, with you, you give amazing explanations of the geometry and proportions in sacred music. But man, the easiest thing to do is just say, well, here, listen to this. And it's like Charles. He goes, here, look at this, and he's got one of his amazing pieces of art. Or even the sticks and balls that we all got used to looking at in school, and it's just y'all are just cool. Everybody, humans are just awesome, Gene.
Yeah, humans are pretty awesome.
That's original. We've never said that before on the show. We try to say it every show because if you're not feeling awesome, just like covering it up, okay? Get that everyday connection, be connected, and watch your awesome go. It's pretty cool.
I like to say that humankind is and this is something I read somewhere, so it's basically a quote from a person who I don't know who the author was, but it stuck with me, is that human beings are a combination of the divine and the profane. If you look back at history, we're pretty profane looking, all the stuff, the wars and blah, 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 and everything. But, at some level, somehow, some weird way, there's this mixture where we have a divine element, and the more we focus on that, the more it can come forth, So if we choose to feel awesome and be awesome, and that's what we're really doing, then we create that reality. It's that simple,
Amen, brother.
Absolutely.
What a way to end the show.
Yeah.
We often ask our guests, if you had one thing you could tell the world, and you did it already. That's so awesome.
Cool.
That's just so awesome. And it's 1:30 hour. It's just.
It is. So
cool.
What do we got?
How do you do that? We don't plan any of this, people. I swear. We have no script. No rehearsal. That's why I'm having a look for our calendar. Oh, yeah. We have on Tuesday Dr. Patrick Price, who is a chiropractor and medical intuitive, and he does some amazing things with chi. And he was a martial artist and got himself so beat up that he couldn't move and found how to heal himself, and so now he helps other people. And then Thursday is Valentine's Day, so Valentine's night, meet us here, same bat time, same bat channel, and we'll have a surprise show.
We'll have a surprise guest for you.
Absolutely. we like to do that sort of thing, surprise guest.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we do it 5 minutes before the show, like, where's the phone number? What? Oh, my God. So y'all think so much, and y'all watch. You're liable to end up seeing Julian over on Inner Child because Bill is there. I want to be sure and shout out to Bill and all the folks at Inner Child. Amazing organization. Look them up. Check it out. Inner Child Radio. And thank you to Little Wing for joining us. Join us again sometime. We have some amazing musicians and other amazing guests and artists on the show. And our one and only goal is to have fun. How do we do?
Great. I had a really enjoyable interview and conversation and show with you two, and you really have done a great job, and so I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you so much for
sharing. That's awesome to hear. And you just tell any of those creative friends of yours that want to come on the show and share with us that they're more than welcome to hook us up and say hi, and we'll put them on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got forms on the website and everything. Yeah, there's Bill's main directory site for Inner Child, just www.iaminnerchild.com, and you can go to Google and search Julian Forest Phoenix, and
absolutely, and of course we have to give a shout out to our legions of podcast listeners, the thousands of you that there are now. Thank you so much for turning this show into so just it's fun.
Hey, one last question. Is this one going to go on YouTube?
Absolutely.
Go on YouTube?
I'll put it up on YouTube, and there's a download link on the show that'll be live here in about 15 minutes. Our shows are covered by Creative Commons, so folks can download them, put them on their iPods, email them to their moms.
Okay.
Buy 5 copies for their mother, autograph them, whatever works. And to that end, we offer our shows. We have over 150 hours of archives up on the website. It's all our gift to y'all. So if you enjoy it, we have a little thing on our website where you can buy us a cup of coffee, because it takes a lot of coffee to do this show, right?
Oh, yes, indeed it does, sir.
Yes,
absolutely.
So
yes,
you all have a wonderful weekend, and join us on Tuesday for Dr. Patrick Price. And until then,
to our mother, to each other, and most importantly to yourself, stay connected.
Good night, everybody.
Blessings. Thank you. Good night.
We hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, visit our website at everydayconnection.me And please like our Facebook page at facebook.com/everydayconnection. Think you might miss an episode? No problem. Subscribe to our show on iTunes by searching for Everyday Connection Radio. Subscriptions are free, just like your Everyday Connection.